Ladies and gentlemen, you already have enough evidence to impeach. You already have enough evidence to indict the president and Hunter and others. When I read the National Review and I'll read other publications, and there are articles saying, well, it's revenge politics. You don't have to impeach. I mean, they did it to Trump, but it's not really good for the country. No, it's actually very good for the country. You can't have one political side utilize media as a public relations monstrosity. If you have serious crimes, but you obsess over Trump's words, that's a problem. Donald Trump didn't commit any crimes as president pertaining to classified data. For example, the precedent prior to his presidency was that you could apparently own servers as Secretary of State without the ability to declassify the way a president has through the Constitution, or just has the ability through the Supreme Court rulings to declassify anything he likes. So they go after Trump, for example, because of classified records he had as a former president that he stated were already declassified. And they let off the hook a Secretary of State with servers. Okay? You can't continually just pick on Trump and obsess over Trump and ignore blatant and rampant criminality. So if Chuck Grassley, and by the way, James Comer has the votes for an impeachment. If Chuck Grassley, this is through his office, Grassley obtains and releases Federal Bureau of Investigation records pertaining to a possible bribery scheme. This isn't a Steele dossier. By the way, the FEC fined Clinton, and I think Clinton will be the 24 nominee for the Democratic Party. I really do. But the FEC fined the DNC. They fined the Democratic Party and Clinton's campaign for purchasing a Steele dossier. The Federal Bureau of Investigation, or agents within the former director, and high-level officials utilized that dossier, literally a compilation of fake, false, absurd, outlandish fantasies against Trump. Meanwhile, you have bank records to the tune of tens of millions of dollars, okay, going into shell companies, all these different corporations linked to Hunter or business associates. So, like the Washington Post, for example, there's zero suspicion at the Washington Post or the New York Times or MSNBC, CNN, New Yorker, The Atlantic. There's no suspicion at all when it comes to hundreds of millions of dollars going to a foundation or philanthropic organization linked to Democrats, and then beneficial treatment taking place, or to Hunter's accounts. Or there's no suspicion. The issue is an emotion called suspicion. They don't believe that Democrats would do any wrong, and also they don't want to believe. There's cognitive dissonance. They cannot distrust their own political party. So they accuse Trump of everything under the sun. So he doesn't get fined by the FEC. He doesn't break any campaign finance laws, but New York indicts him, and they don't indict Clinton, even though the DNC and her campaign actually were fined by the FEC and the federal government in terms of campaign laws. I mean, you can go down. I mean, you look at what took place in Georgia. That is, they're saying it's an enterprise. They're using the RICO statutes, a criminal enterprise, and it's like it's not only is it not a criminal enterprise, you could make the same allegations towards Democrats. Democrats walk in lockstep all the time. They knew very well that Trump was never an operative of the Kremlin, but they accused him of that, and actually, with the special counsel, found that they were wrong the entire time. So, are they going to get indicted for false statements and absurd allegations and claims that were baseless, proven to be false, pertaining to Trump and Moscow? Are they going to be indicted? Are they going to indict? So, I mean, it's like you have this double standard, and the reality is Trump doesn't have a laptop with emails pointing to clear bribery, graft, and pay-to-play schemes. When they say, well, there's nothing really impeachable, there was absolutely nothing impeachable with Trump. It was a phone conversation his first time. Secondly, it wasn't hundreds of millions of dollars and a laptop pointing to obvious graft schemes. It was a phone conversation that they said, oh, well, basically, they accused Trump of doing exactly what Biden did, which is force out a prosecutor and withhold $1 billion unless the prosecutor is forced out. Then we found out after Trump was impeached that, oh, Hunter's laptop had all the receipts. And so, I mean, it's like, it's not revenge politics. It's called actual politics. You can't just allow one political side to steamroll the other all the time. You have to politically engage in the same practices, especially when the other political side is actually committing crimes. So hit subscribe to this channel right now, ladies and gentlemen. To read my writing on The Hill, The Huffington Post, Salon, The Jerusalem Post, The Federalist, and other publications, go to hagoodman.com. If you want to support my work long term, my Patreon is below, ladies and gentlemen, and the super thanks is below next to the like and the share buttons. But here, Calmer, who is leading the congressional investigation into Biden's family and business dealings, said he thinks the emails he's been able to secure from the National Archives and records of administration from Biden's time as vice president finally convinced the final few Republicans to support opening an impeachment. Okay, you cannot, like I said, if you focus only on Trump and you ignore $20 million linked to deals, foreign business deals in countries throughout the world, and then you ignore also, for example, emails. So emails show Hunter introduced business people to Joe. I mean, if they lie about everything and they accuse Trump of lying, and that's their like obsession. So it's just Trump, Trump, Trump. Meanwhile, you have obvious graft and bribery. Trump is a billionaire. He's made billions through business. He's made billions through golf courses, The Apprentice, casinos. He sells a product, whether it's real estate or hotels, or land. He sells a product. Democrats sell influence. That's why in one of these New York Post articles, the emails reveal how Hunter introduced. That article shows actual emails where people are asking from other countries being invaded now under Biden's watch for influence. How can you use your influence on the company's behalf? And then that influence just happens to coincide with Joe forcing out a prosecutor. So, I mean, it's like really absurd and outlandish and sad and pathetic when you have this mentality that Democrats can go after Trump all the time. And the second you want to do the same thing, well, that's bad for the country. No, it's very good for the country to find out the corruption within the Democratic Party. It's not a plot by the Kremlin. It's not some kind of terrible national security concern. God forbid Democrats get investigated and a Democratic president gets impeached. We've seen a Democratic president already get impeached. Clinton actually committed perjury. Okay, you could say, well, it's just, that was his own personal issue in the Oval Office, but he lied about it and committed perjury. Okay, Trump never committed perjury. He was acquitted twice because there was no evidence he ever committed a crime. There is evidence. When they say there's not enough evidence, there's a lot of smoke, but there's really nothing there. You have to, if you have evidence of criminality, you then indict, and then you in a court of law, you prove it. That's what an indictment is about. In this case, it would be an impeachment, but you can also indict because you have the money flow. People, if you already have the emails asking for influence, and then you have the money flow, and it's like, the writers of the National Review are really great, but I don't understand what the mentality is. Like, you have the emails. You have the money flow. They're asking for influence. There's millions upon millions from everyone around the world going into Hunter and Joe's accounts. Shady, surreptitious accounts. So what do you expect to happen? You think they're going to write you a letter saying, yes, we did this? Yes, we sold influence? No, you impeach just like they impeached Trump. This time you actually impeach because they committed crimes. Trump was impeached on a phone conversation and a speech. This impeachment will be linked to hundreds of millions of potential dollars going into bank accounts for influence. It's called bribery and graft. Infinitely more important than a speech or a phone call. Give me your thoughts below. Hit subscribe.